Welcome to Inspirational Leadership. I'm your host, Kristen Harcourt, and we have another exciting guest. Today, I'm going to be speaking to Michele Graglia, who's a former top model and is currently one of the world's top ultra runners. Since 2011, he has competed in over 30 ultramarathons all over the world, often winning and setting course records. He set the Guinness World Record by being the first person in history to win both the hottest and coldest foot races on earth. And I think everyone is going to learn a lot from Michele. Welcome to the show.
Kristen, thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited for people to learn more about your story because I think it's quite fascinating and also so much serendipity, right? I really truly believe there are no accidents. And I think so many things in your journey all happened not to you, but for you, for your growth and transformation. But can you start off? So, you're originally from Italy, and at some point you left Italy and came to Miami. Can you talk to us a little about your story?
Yes, absolutely. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I was born and raised in Italy. Right after my studies, I started working in the family business in the floral industry. It was, right out of school, 21, 22, 23 years old. It was a very exciting business. I was able to travel the world, learn different languages and connect with people from, pretty much anywhere from California to Japan. And so, it was a very exciting time. It was very, very rewarding, both on a personal level and also on a financial level. And so, life developed pretty much all around that. And, I got all my things and it was all good until I felt the urge to do something on my own. The business was always, let's say, my family's legacy and something they created from nothing. It was absolutely inspiring for the fact they came from nothing. They were able to create something. And so out of that, spark, I always felt the need to develop something more beyond that and not just take what they created and make it my own. So, by chance, I decided to take a plane and land in Miami. At the time, that was our main port of entry. And so I decided to spend a little period of time, perhaps 6 months to a year, to improve the language, develop the business, and even open up a branch. But, one of those sliding doors type of situation, I found myself in the right place at the right time. And I was, first week I was in South Beach. I was still strolling down Ocean Drive, looking for apartments. Mine at the time, I was still crashing on a friend's couch. And I got caught by a thunderstorm, dove the first spot across the street. And right there and right then, I met this lady, which happened to be the director of one of the most famous modeling agencies in the world. And, one thing led to another. That day, she invited me to her office and I walked out with a contract in hand that literally changed my life completely. I was thrown into this industry that, I was 24 years old at the time, coming from a small town in the inland of Italy. That was almost like a dream come true, getting scouted right there. And, right in that spot, everything changes. My whole life direction changed. And so, I rode that wave. I started working at a very, very good clip. I started getting introduced to the whole lifestyle that comes with it, especially in Miami, the whole party lifestyle and, introduced to the socialite and celebrities and everything that comes with it. And, it was fun. It was absolutely a blast. It felt like the king of the world. Everything was handed out, everything, everybody wanted you, everybody, it was a very, very, almost like a movie-like type of scenario, and I rode that for a while until I came to somewhat of, I had a couple of breaking points, let's say. Initially became, the weight of the lifestyle started to really weigh on me. Because of course, the whole thing of sex, drugs, and rock and roll is fun up to a certain point. But then, when you start losing control, it really starts spiraling down and becomes a very negative influence in everything that you do in everyday life. That was one of the initial crisis, let's say that, I started to acknowledge the fact that I couldn't sustain that pace, that I couldn't sustain that lifestyle. I was unhealthy, both physically and mentally. And so, thankfully my career was going great. And so along with that, I made the decision to move to New York to kind of get away from that. And also, in a way, kind of empower myself to be in the biggest market and allow myself to tap into the biggest clients, both, on an editorial level, magazines, clients, photographers. That's where you need to be. So that was a good transition, but along with that came a massive personal crisis. So even if I moved away from that that detrimental lifestyle, my personal crisis was still very much in place. And until I came to a very, very, I would say probably the most critical time in my life, where I came to confront myself in a way. And I came to this realization sitting outside the windowsill of a 15th floor apartment building, right in the tip of a Battery Park, the tip of Manhattan. I came back home late at night after yet another party filled with celebrities and bottles and everything that comes with it. And, in a great moment of silence and introspections, I sat out there. It's always hard talking about suicide or contemplating suicide, but when you start to confront yourself and your existence, really, what are you doing, who you are, and what direction you're taking in life, it really becomes real. And that morning, it was almost like, that it was at the crack of dawn, really. It was almost like it's an alarm rang for me. It was like, you need to make a change, or this is it. There's no, the amazing thing is that I acknowledge is the fact that I had reached the bottom of the pit, and there was only one way out. It was either ending it there, or I had to look up and climb back up for myself, really. And that morning, thanks to the love that I felt from my family and the friends that I had around, I came to the realization that even if I was in the most critical time in my life, absolutely dissatisfied, couldn't find purpose, couldn't find fulfillment in what I was doing, I realized that I was still 27 years old. And not that it matters, because we are always in time at any stage in our lives, but specifically for me at that moment, I was like, I'm 27 years old. I can't change my life another 10 times if I want to. And so, like I did before, moving from Italy, starting this new career, eventually finding myself at that point, I realized that all I needed to do was make a conscious decision and work towards whichever direction I wanted to. So that morning, I was pretty much committed to make a change, even though I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew that there was a possibility. And so, I walked back, literally stepped back into my senses, came back to my senses, and I began doing tons of research. I started reading tons and tons of books. I have piles of books of any sort, from everything that I thought could help me pick myself back up. And here I'm talking about, of course, I was very much drawn to adventure and exploration. That kind of gave me a breath of fresh air, but also started digging into, motivational coaches and, leadership coaches, and everything that would empower me to not feel like a victim, by knowing that I had my destiny in my hands, that I could do, it was an empty canvas. I do whatever I could have done, whatever I wanted. And, following that belief, kind of like the American spirit, let's say that, if you work hard, you can achieve whatever you set out to. I believed it. And, I really started digging into it. And, one thing led to another for a long period of time. I'm talking about over a year. I was still, of course, modeling. But at the time I was picking my nose in everything that could kind of was attracting me. And it was drifting more and more towards adventure and exploration until Christmas time, 2010, I landed in I stumbled upon this book called Ultramarathon Man by Nazis. And, that book not only changed my life, but it really saved it. And, fast forward 11 years later, we're here talking.
Wow. Of course, I want to take you in so many directions. We could have like a 3-hour conversation because there's so much richness there. So a couple of things, an observation, it's interesting and people might not be thinking themselves that like, yeah, it's might not be the model world for them, but there is this belief that you'll somehow get to this place, right? Same thing with La La Land. You'll get the money, you'll get the things, you'll get the friends, you'll get to party. And then you get there and then all of a sudden there's this emptiness there because it's not what you thought it was going to be. So, I mean, that's one thing I want to reflect in that observation, but I also think what's really cool is it's a reminder for everybody that's listening right now. It's so much about the mindset. Like our brain is so powerful because in that moment when people are at that place and their body is getting their attention, everything in them are like, no, 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 this isn't the right path. There's a different path. It can feel like in that moment, but there's nothing you can do. There's this stuckness that feels like it's always going to be like this. And it's what I hear you had was that shift where you recognize, oh no, like every moment I am making all the choices to decide and be wherever I am. And so you had that shift and recognize, oh, it's time for a new pathway.
That's absolutely right. It's what you said at the beginning is very fitting for the fact that, I think from a very young age, we all instill that sense that we need to achieve success. And for success, I mean, social status, financial, all of that, you got to make money, you got to have fancy things, because only then you'll be happy. But the realization of most people is that once you get there, that's not the answer. Because of course, it'll be naive that money doesn't serve a good purpose in life, because of course it's good to have, financial freedom to do what we want to do. But it is not, that should be the outcome of doing something more meaningful for ourselves and for those around us that will give us meaning, because will give our life meaning, purpose, and not being based on the financial reward, but seeing the financial reward just as a result of your good work. And so that, getting there at that point was absolutely a face plant. It was almost like getting punched in the mouth. It's like, I worked hard. I worked so hard to get to this point because, of course, modeling, you have to have certain assets on your side to have access to it, but it's not an easy ride. You have to work hard. You have to be absolutely professional to be able to tap at the high level. Of course, you can work for, there's a lot of models nowadays, but I'm talking about, working for the biggest names and working at the highest level. It requires, just like every other career, it requires absolute dedication. Yeah. And so, I got to the point following the dream, following the path, and realizing that it left me absolutely empty, as you said.
Yeah.
And, it was, the relationships in there was very, very shallow. The whole system was just absolutely crushing me. And, it's very, I think it comes down to each and every single experience, of course. But in my personal experience, it really came to a point where there was no other way. There was no other way. Like I had to make a change, as I said. It didn't matter how fancy, how glamorous, how cool I might have looked in the face of, in other people's eyes or opinions. Because of course, once I decided to make that step, and for whatever reason decided to pursue ultra running, there were a lot of doubts. There was a lot of people saying, why would you even think about doing that? You have everything you want. You're living the life that most people want. But in the end, if you don't find and I keep on repeating, purpose or fulfillment, contentment even, it doesn't make any, it makes no sense. You can have all the money in the world and you'll still be miserable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I left all of that behind to pursue this nonsense career that eventually, after many, many years of work, brought me to the point that I dreamt at the beginning.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying with that too, is I think it's also this philosophy of more, 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 right? Like it's not even just the actual money. Like if I get this, if I have more friends, if I have more celebrity, if more people know who I am, more status, more, there's this conditioning we have because we get it from culture that tells us
Right.
when we
You're never satisfied.
Right. You're not, because it's always feels like, and so what I hear happened for you is thou took a step back and went on an inward journey. And this was more of a soul-based journey. And then, so tell me more. So now you read the book, you start to ultra marathons. I mean, let's also step back for a second. You are someone, and I love how you said that, because I think this with so many professions, there can be so many misperceptions, right? Like, oh, acting, it's so easy, or modeling is so easy. And again, I always say, oh, you should go do that job for like one day and see if you feel the same way. You had to be training your body. You had to have a certain weight. You could only eat certain foods. Like it was a very, very rigid, structured schedule. So I see you already are someone who takes good care of your body from a health perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it definitely switched, the whole thing kind of switched to a more, taking care more of the nutrition rather than just starving before. It was, but either way, it was, even back when I was modeling, it was very much a regimented lifestyle. Yeah. So that requires a lot of, a lot of care, a lot of commitment. Because when you're hungry and you're not supposed to eat, you're not gonna eat. Yeah. And so and everyday training and professionalism, and being a model, it's not just about standing in front of the camera, but it's about knowing how to move. So all of these things kind of came into play. But the one thing that trying to reconnect to what we were saying, to me at that point was a matter of kind of digging in and kind of take that introspective journey to see what called me really. Yeah. I came from business and I knew that that could always fold it back on that. But as I said before, that's always been my father's legacy, my family's legacy. And for as great as it was as an experience, as an opportunity of growth, I just never felt in my own. So very much at that point, I started digging in and kind of reconnecting to my roots. I was very much privileged from a very young age to be introduced to the beautiful nature that we had around. We live by the Mediterranean Sea, but we also had the great opportunity to ski the Alps in the winter, hike the Dolomites in the summer, because everything was right there. It was so close, and we had access to it. And I started developing this great sense of appreciation and respect for nature. And in that moment, especially living in that concrete jungle of New York, it was almost like the call of the wild was getting louder and louder. So as I said, I started really getting into all these adventure stories from high mountain climbers, big river swimmers, ocean rowers, all of that. Everything was great and exciting, but nothing really spoke to me until I discovered ultrarunning. It was a world that I didn't even know existed at that point. And you were talking just over a decade ago. Yeah. We all know marathons, but at the time I didn't know what ultras were. I didn't know what this concept of beyond running, ultra running, right? And so this whole thing kind of swept me off my feet, and it was so fascinating, so inspiring that I was like, you know what? I love running, but I want to be part of this. I want to understand what this concept going beyond means. So bought a pair of shoes, started running laps in Central Park. 5 months later, not even, I towed the line to my first race, which happened to be 100-miler. So I jumped 10 steps ahead. I skipped all the middle distances. I went for the queen of distances. And just because I was so curious, I was so committed to give it a try that I'm like, I know marathons are absolutely demanding and a great challenge, but and 50 milers are absolutely challenging, but I want to know what he's talking about. I want to experience for myself this, this transcend, almost like a transcendental experience of going beyond your physicality, destroying the barriers of the mind to discover yourself. And it's almost like a meditative experience. It's very much like a spiritual journey. And I can tell you that now that I kind of experienced it more and more, and I kind of navigate that better. So back then I just showed up, handheld, in my hand, a bottle in hand, short shorts, no shirt, down in the tropics, 100 degrees, 100% humidity down in South Florida. And, I started out this race with great high hopes until, everything fell apart. I passed out cold, mile 84. They took me out on an ambulance. And, this is a funny story. I remember sitting out there with an ambulance door open, the IV in my arm, and my family, which came to crew for me from Italy, they were all crying outside the ambulance, begging me to never do it again. And that's how it started.
So help me understand, because I love it. Like, for many people listening, 42 miles in a marathon feels like a huge endeavor. And here we have you doing 100.
42 kilometers. This is 160 kilometers. Yeah.
60 kilometers. Wow. So help me understand. So let's just start off with, what was the lesson for you after that one? So you got to the point, so your family's like, don't ever do this again. And
right.
You're like, oh, I can't wait to do this again. So two very contrasting experiences.
Yeah.
What happened for you after that moment? So you could go in the ambulance, 85, you did 85 even, which is crazy. Like, you're able to do that. What was the learning? What was your soul telling you after you had that experience?
Well, the one thing that gave me great courage and hope was the fact that when I passed out, I was in first place. And, it was quite incredible to me to see that with that very little preparation, with that very little knowledge, I was able to achieve that. So it was a failure for sure, but I have never really seen failures as me being a failure. Simply, it's a false step on the way to achieving something greater, and most often they become the greatest lessons. And so to me, at that point, I took that lesson and I understood what I needed to do, or at least I understood that there was a lot more work that I needed to do to perfect the art, the craft, and set myself up for success. What I needed to do was, of course, more preparation, not necessarily physical, more on a mental side, but also more attention to the nutrition, to the hydration, to to the self-management and care that comes, when you tackle such hardest endeavors. And so, with that understanding, I started developing myself. I started studying more. I started taking, taking certifications through the USA Track and Field. I became a running coach. I became a sports nutritionist. I became a personal trainer. I started really checking all the boxes that I could to perfect the craft and understand the physiology, so that the next time, I told the line, and that was about 6 months later, I kind of dropped down the target. I was like, okay, maybe let's go with a 50 miler so that I know I can manage it. I won that race, and that gave me a great boost of confidence. I was like, all right, if I keep on going down this road, I can probably be good at it. Third race, won that race again. Fourth race, won that race again. And I was like, all right, here, I don't want to say I'm on a streak, but I'm definitely picking up momentum and understanding more and more what I need to do. And so, the process, of course, is never ending. I mean, I'm still working on it nowadays. I'm 10 years later. I'm still finding out stuff that I can develop better. I'm still finding out things that I could have done better. I still have things that I haven't found out that I know that will allow me to be it's almost a constant work of progress, work of, sorry.
Work in progress. Yes, I
That's
say
right.
that all
Work
the
in
time.
progress.
Work in
Yes, yes.
progress.
It's a
Yes.
constant development, personal growth and self-development at every level.
Yeah.
So I find that to be very purposeful. It's absolutely an exciting process because you never perfect the art, you never perfect the craft. Doesn't matter how good you are, there's always room for more. And so to me, that kind of became a self-propelling task that never ends. It's a constant work, it's a constant development, and that gave me purpose because every morning I get up with one goal in mind and I know what I need to do.
Yeah, I love what you said there too, because one of my lines I use all the time is progress over perfection, right? Because how often do people hold themselves back because they want that perfection? And first of all, it's unachievable. You're never going to get to perfection. And why would you want to, right? You're always growing and progressing and evolving. And
That would be the end of the road.
it would, right? I said, you're never done learning till the day you die. Like there's always going to be something else. And how beautiful is that? Our life would
That
be so
is,
boring if we didn't.
I couldn't agree more with you. Yes.
Yeah. So talk to me around, I hear as you're talking through this, even when you're recognizing all the different things you have to do for training, there's such a mindset shift. And even I love it in your book, which I highly recommend the book. It's wonderful, called Ultra. Even in the book, you were mentioning before you get into a race that you don't have people around you, and because you have to get into that mental state. So I think there's so many things that translate to what you're experiencing in ultra marathon that for everybody here, ultra marathon's not necessarily going to be their thing, but it's around recognizing your limitations. So what have you started to learn about the mind and how we can be setting limits?
I think it's a most fascinating concept. Not taking the limitations that we're presented with, because of course, from a very young age, we're put in boxes. We're told what we can do, we're told what we cannot do, because it's never been done before. You cannot, you have to walk in between the lines and scratch all of that. That's all BS in my opinion. It's the wonderful journey that we have and that we call life is our own, and each and every experience is different. And we have the opportunity, the wonderful opportunity to venture out there, whichever endeavor we're doing, and carve our path, carve our very much, discover our own limitations. But you'll never be able to do that, to experience that, if you don't actually step outside your comfort zone. So you do need to get in a place where there is uncertainty. You need to get a place where there is pain. You need to get to that place where there is discomfort, because only at that point you'll discover your strengths, your resilience, and your abilities to actually go past those perceived limitations and see for yourself how far you can actually go. And here I'm talking about how far, but how far, not necessarily in terms of miles, but how far in terms of setting up that business, developing your career. Here he can, he transcends the discipline. He becomes a lesson that can be applied to any endeavor in life, even relationships, if you will. And so, that to me is an absolute privilege to be in this position where, there is nothing is taken for granted. Nothing is accepted for what it is until I experience it for myself. And what I realize in the process is that we're all capable of a lot more than what we think we can. So we need to stop holding ourselves back. And here I link up to what you said about, being around people, or actually not being around people. I think growth happens in solitude. I think ideas and creativity gets developed when you allow yourself to disconnect from the outside influences, connect within, and listen to your own voice. Because let's be real. In everyday life, we very seldomly allow ourselves to do that. Because from the moment we wake up, we have emails, we have our partners, we have our friends, we have our colleagues, we have our boss, we have this, we have that, we have radios, we have news, we have bombarded, we have social media, which is terrifying at this time. we are bombarded by outside influences, and we don't realize that our focus, our energy is always going outward. We never really take the time to sit down and switch the focus inward, because it's only listening to that inner voice that you can truly tap into what you need to do and what it is that you want to do for yourself, and you discover how to achieve it.
Uh, I relate to this 100%. With so many of the leaders I talk with, it's helping them to understand and give themselves the gift and commit to creating that spaciousness.
Yes.
And I was going to ask you this question and you started to answer it, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it as well. Is so often the pushback I get is, I don't have the time. And I say, oh, interesting. You don't have the time. So we're going to start doing time tracking and see where you're spending your time. And they see, like, so often, like sometimes hours, talking about social media, hours, because what they're actually doing, instead of taking the action, they're avoiding taking action, and they're scrolling through social media because emotions are coming up for them. And the emotions are showing up is, this doesn't feel good. I want to do something to challenge myself and get outside my comfort zone. But that's a little bit uncomfortable. So I don't want to be in that discomfort. So I'm just going to stay here and scroll where it's nice, going to keep me nice and safe. And I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to think about it.
That's absolutely right. Yes.
Right. Right.
It is a trick. It is a trap. It is a cage, we fall into. Unfortunately, comfort is I think is the greatest drug of our times, is the worst drug of our times. We are so involved into this, I would say, false sense of securities too, that we don't feel like, perhaps we don't need to, even not just that we cannot, but maybe we don't need to put ourselves out there and challenge ourselves and be uncomfortable and confront our insecurities. All of these things require a great deal of self-control, and I think also commitment and dedication to be developed. I think that I often talk about this. I've been a yoga teacher for a long time, and this also allowed me to kind of perfect this mindset, or I wouldn't say perfect, develop the mindset. But I absolutely recognize the power of meditation to be absolutely worthwhile for everyone to explore. Of course, we're not gonna, you're not gonna sit down the first time and understand meditation and come out being enlightened and know exactly what you're gonna need to do in life and what you are and who you are and all of these things. But it's gonna, even just starting out, sitting down for 15 minutes, your eyes closed, and just beginning to tap into that. Because the first time you sit down, you're gonna be bombarded by thoughts. And that's always the major problem. We recognize our thoughts as who we are. We can identify with our thoughts. And I think there's nothing more wrong than that. We are not our thoughts. Our thoughts are just like clouds in the sky. They come and they go. They absolutely interfere with our decisions. And that's the problem. But they do not, we are not our thoughts. We are something much higher than that. And it's only when you begin to acknowledge those thoughts, quiet down the mind, that you begin to connect with your inner self. And that's when the pull to do something greater comes. I think it's absolutely necessary for everyone at every level to do that, for the reason that, we live in a society that is absolutely ego-driven. And the ego comes from the mind. The mind, every time we do something, it's always about either gain or security. And that's a trick. That's a trick that keeps us caged in our, that doesn't allow us to experience life at the highest level, in my opinion, at a higher level at least. And because, talking about in a more relatable sense, think about business. If we talk about coming from an egotistical mind, you develop a business because you want to make money. That's as simple as that, most of the time. That is fine, that is fine. As we said before, money is great. Financial freedom is absolutely awesome. But I think that if we all allow to develop our heart, our soul, our spirit, whatever we want to call our higher self, we begin to also open up to a more loving and kind version of ourselves. Here I'm talking about different concepts. Stop me if I'm going off road.
No, we talk this language on this podcast. Perfect.
What I think is going to be the biggest hurdle of our generation and the generations to come is not necessarily just work to work and make money, but work to be a service, a higher purpose in life, being a service, being of help of people around us. So here again, if you come from the heart, you're going to be developing something to help out other people around. And if the service is worthwhile and good enough, then eventually the financial return will come and it will give you that freedom that you're looking for. So it's very much it's the seed that is different. You know, the direction, the help, the work is always going to be there. The self-development, the physical and the mental is going to be there. But there's a switch, almost like a perspective switch that we're taking. And here, you know, it circles back to what I do. And you tell me, okay, so what do you do that is a service of others? And when you're running by yourself in the middle of the desert up on a mountain ridge. And the answer is that I think at this point, being in this position and being imposing of inspiration for others, knowing that even in your darkest time, you can climb back up. You can still, at any time in your life, doesn't matter how good or bad, doesn't matter the circumstances, you can still pick yourself up, you can still develop yourself, and you can still live a life worth living. And this is because right from the get-go, right from the moment that I read that book, I acknowledge how powerful inspiration is. Because again, that book not only changed my life, but it actually saved it.
So beautiful. And that's why this podcast is called Inspirational Leadership, from that same perspective, because so a couple of things with what you just said. I love that. Like, people, through them seeing you and what you're doing and what's possible, they recognize in themselves what's possible. And then the other, what I heard you saying, and we talk a lot about that in this podcast as well, is what it looks like to drop down from your head to your heart. And it doesn't mean your head's going anywhere. It's still head and heart. But when you start to come from head and heart, and this is my longing for all of the world, because that's what I think it looks like to raise consciousness.
Absolutely, yes.
Right? When we raise consciousness,
that's what it's all about. Yeah.
We have humans operating from that place, and it's always looking for, how can I contribute? How can I be of service? How can I be my higher self and come from that place? And guess what? Everyone listening, that's when you feel most connected to you, to yourself, and the people around you. It's this beautiful energy that you put out and comes right back to you. I'm telling you, you all want this.
Oh,
you
yeah.
all want this.
It's there. It's the cherry on top, you know, and you hit the right notes. I mean, it's really about raising your awareness, your consciousness, your understanding of who we are, you know, because developing the connection within yourself, as you said, will allow also to develop that connection all around. And the energy that you put out, it always comes back 10 times fold. It's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, we could keep talking for hours and hours about this, but I think it's, you know, it's absolutely worthwhile to share this, absolutely necessary to share this message, because as I said, this is going to be the hurdle of our generation. You know, we see all these businesses doing work for just, you know, financial gains, destroying the world and taking advantage of people. But we don't realize that we all connected, we all one, we're all the same. And so, you know, damaging not just, and I'm talking about not just as human beings, but the whole world, we're all one energy. And, you know, destroying our planet, destroying our people, destroying different, I mean, it's absolutely terrifying. And this is raising the consciousness is the only way. Doesn't matter the political decisions, the economical decisions, it comes down to the singularity, to the singular person to develop their personal consciousness to be able to contribute at the highest level. And that's the only way, in my opinion, that we can make the world a better place.
It is. It's what the world needs so badly. And I love what you're doing and the message that you're getting out. And again, I recommend to everybody to read Ultra, because you'll hear more of Michele's story. And it's incredible and it's poignant, right? Through your story, I think people will recognize themselves. They don't have to be in the same situation. No, they might not have, they might not have got to be a supermodel, right? But it doesn't matter. For some, it's climbing the corporate ladder and feeling that they're going to get to a place, and then they get there and they wonder what's going on. This isn't what I was promised. Like, there was a pack of lies that were sent to me and I don't like what's happening here. Right. It's recognizing that it's never too late, right? Any moment right now, you're listening to this podcast, take a step back and commit to creating more space in your life to have reflection and ask yourself these questions, experiment with meditation. But like Michele was saying, it doesn't just going for a walk in nature and just being outside. I talk a lot about just being instead of doing, and reconnecting.
We're speaking the same language. And you're putting in much better words than I am.
No, you are. It's incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been agreeing with you this whole call. I think as I said, we're speaking the same language. It's really about, we're human beings, no human doings. We're not need to just do all the time. We need that time to simply be, to disconnect from everything outside, because it doesn't matter if it's positive, negative, all the outside influences are still clouds in your sky. And you can only, circling back to what you were saying before races, I take a step back and disconnect from everybody and take 2, 3, 4 days where I try not to see anyone, just because every single opinion, even if you put it aside and you don't agree with it, is still a seed in your mind. And it's always going to weigh you down in a way or another. So we need to experience that simple that place of purity where we are connected within, and we begin to bring that energy from within and not from the egotistical mind. I kind of missed the cue because you were saying something great. I didn't want to stop you there, but of course the mind is always going to be there, because that's part of, that's what processes our thoughts. That's what actually makes the decisions to the physical to take actions. But, there's a great Buddhist saying that says, the mind is a great servant, but a terrible master. And here, again, it connects to what you were saying, for the fact that if you allow yourself to come from a place of purity and heart, the spirit, the soul, you can use the mind as a tool to achieve anything in life. But if you allow the mind to make the decision, the egotistical mind, it's always going to take the easy way out. It's always going to it's always going to search for the comfort zone. It's always going to search for that security. And one thing we need to understand, and we probably kind of did in this past year and a half, we have control over nothing. So coming from a place of flow rather than a place of resistance will allow you to truly experience life at the highest level, be able to develop yourself at the highest level, and be able to contribute at the highest level.
Oh, I love that. I was going to ask you as we start to wrap up, for your final thought, but I almost feel like I want that to be your final thought, because it's such a poignant, such a beautiful reminder of what's possible and what it looks like to work with your mind and go into that ease and flow. But I'll still give you an opportunity if you want to leave final thoughts, perhaps even what you've learned from these races that you've won. I mean, you've done these amazing things that nobody else in the world has done with the hottest and coldest in the world and won them. Maybe that's where you want to go, but I don't want to tell you where to go. You get to go. If you want to leave your final thoughts.
Yes. Well, the one thing that I would like to share with the audience is that it is absolutely necessary to step outside the comfort of our castle. It is absolutely necessary to take the risk perhaps even fail, but have the courage to rise back again, overcoming all the fears, because of course fear is always going to be there, self-doubt, but we need to overcome that. It's, as I said before, it is absolutely necessary. In every step that we make in the unknown, in uncharted territory, we can, and here, as I said before, it can be developing a business, it can be a career, it can be a relationship, it can be running, climbing, biking, any endeavor in life. It's only then, stepping in the unknown, that we discover our strengths and our perseverance to reach the dreams that we set for ourselves. It is in the process of growth that we realize that we're all much more capable of what we think we are. It's just in this way that we evolve and push towards an always better version of ourselves, a more conscious, a more content, and I would say grateful self. So here is as an invitation to all of you, in any direction you want to pursue in life, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to venture beyond your perceived limitation. Take the step and allow yourself to live a wonderful life.
Thank you so much for being here, Michele. Where can people learn more about you and get your book? Where's the best place to send them?
Well, I'm pretty much on every social media platform, but the one that I'm most active is Instagram, and you can find me at Mickey, M-I-C-K-Y, and my last name Graglia, Graglia, and or on my website, michelegraglia.com. The book can be accessed from my website or simply on Amazon. It can be delivered pretty much worldwide right now.
Amazing. And I'll have all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's been a wonderful pleasure. Thank you so much, Kristen.
And everyone, wherever you are in the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're sending you lots of love. Bye-bye.